Hello and welcome everyone to today's makeup tutorial. I am Angelica Lize and this is how we're going to be getting this glamour look today. First off, today we're going to be taking our wig cap and pulling that over our head, taking all of our hair and pulling it back and also giving us a bit of a facelift, really getting it up in there and making sure everything is nice and tight and ready for makeup. And once everything is nice and set and you're ready to go, make sure you start off and get a nice clean makeup wipe. This is going to help you throughout your process in order to clean your brushes as you go and allow you to make sure everything is nice and prepped and you can clean up any messes you might run into along the way. I always fold mine in half to make sure I only use parts of it at a time. At this section of the video, I'm taking it and rubbing it over my eyebrows to make sure that no excess oil is on them, as we will be gluing them down today. I'll take the back of my hand usually and run over top to dry them out, just to make sure there's no excess moisture. I did forget to bring my fan with me today, so you'll see me waving at myself a lot. We're going to take a plain old Elmer's glue stick, the disappearing purple, and we'll be taking that and rubbing it into our brows. Now you can either push back into, as I've done on this brow, and brush the hairs back, but at this point I forgot I did not bring a comb with me in which to bring them back to lay them flat against my skin, so I went in with my finger and made sure to push down very hard and try to move all the hairs in the same direction to make sure that they were nice and smooth. You'll also be repeating this step to the other side, making sure that everything is nice and smooth down onto your skin with no hairs popping up whatsoever. Make sure you clean up around the edges as you're going. This will help you not to have an excess of product that will get in the way of your makeup later. I'm going to begin here fanning myself to make sure that the product can dry. You'll know it's dry when it's clear, which is mainly the purpose of the glue being the disappearing purple. Once it is dry, then we can begin our next step. Now that we're nice and dried out, we're going to take our Coty Airspun powder in the naturally neutral with a little bit of pigment. We're going to take that and shake it around a bit and get it on our powder puff. Once you do pack a bit onto your powder puff, you're going to run that over the glue and press it in lightly at first, and then you'll end up pushing it in very firmly to make sure everything is nice and flat. This step will also be repeated to the opposite side. Once you have taken and done both sides of your makeup with the Elmer's glue stick and the airspun powder over top, you're going to repeat this process a few times until you feel your hairs have been adequately covered for makeup application on top. You'll be doing this at least twice to make sure everything is nice and flat and prepared for makeup. Now that you're nice and flattened out with your brows, you're going to take a nice dusting brush of some sort, dust away the excess powder to make sure there's none chilling around when you're getting ready to do your foundation. Now I just finished prepping my e.l.f. concealer brush. I only paid $1 for this brush, and it's actually helped me in many different ways throughout my makeup. It's very useful and versatile for very many different parts of the face. It's a very small concealer brush. The next brush I have is by the Wet n Wild collection. This one I paid $1 for. It's a nice eyeshadow brush. This is a small concealer brush by the Wet n Wild collection. A little bit larger than the last. And this is my contour brush by the Wet n Wild collection. It is a little dirty, but I've been painting plenty of mug lately. And my product that I'm going in with today is CoverGirl Vitalist in the 710. This is one of the lighter shades in the collection. I'm going to take this foundation and I'm going to go ahead and place that foundation on a freshly cleaned silicone blending sponge. They're very nice because you don't waste any product and you also can get a nice smooth finish without any absorption of your makeup. It'll all go straight to your face, which is great for full coverage drag. I'm beginning to place my foundation over my skin, which has been moisturized and primed beforehand. I'm going to go ahead and put this foundation basically all over my face in areas where I'm going to have makeup covering it, which is going to be everywhere as drag makeup is very full coverage. Make sure you get your eye spaces too, as the foundation will serve as a bit of an extra primer for your eyeshadows to go on top of, as well as any other product you'll be placing on your eyes to also protect your skin. Now this is the Clown White by Ben Nye. This is a cream concealer that I use for basically everything, but for this right now I'm using it for a highlight, which goes right underneath of my eye area. Excuse the small hair that came out of nowhere. I'm going to use this under my eye area and blend it out in a nice triangular shape to give myself a heightened, very soft looking face. I'll be doing this in key spots of the face, which are the under the eyes, the top of my chin, and the top of my upper lip, along with the bridge of my nose and the height of my forehead right in the center. These all bring the face forward and give you a more rounded off and feminine appearance. After you've placed your highlights, you'll take the leftover foundation on your sponge and mix it in with the white cream concealer. This will give you a nice base to cover your brows. Now, this may take 1 or 2 layers, but it is a nice coverage and will definitely cover most of medium shade brows. If you have a darker brow, you may need to color correct. Mine aren't too terribly dark underneath of the glue and powder that have already covered my brow, so I just take 1 or 2 layers and lay it over. Now make sure you do this quickly with the glue stick, and make sure you try to go with the grain. I'm grabbing a little extra product to make sure I have a good coverage on it. Go with the grain and not against, because the glue is sensitive, and that being said, it doesn't do well if you work against it. I'm going to go ahead and blend out some of my highlights in my forehead zone and in the eyebrow area. Just blending all that together so I can set it with powder. As you'll want to set the powder with the eyebrow coverage as soon as you can so that it doesn't blend into the Elmer's glue stick, which is not waterproof. When you're doing this, you'll want to tilt your head down so that you won't have any powder mixed into the areas of highlight that you have not blended yet, to make sure that only the powder goes on the spaces that you are blended. I always smooth out my creases on my forehead to make sure that the foundation is properly set within them, and pack extra powder in there. That helps fill in the spaces and make them less apparent. Now that that's set, we're going to go ahead and take our stick foundation. This is NYX Mineral Foundation in the shade Fair. We're going to take that and run that across our neck area. For me, this is a nice transition shade and allows me to easily paint and blend out between my face and my neck to where there isn't much of a transition in shade and color. It's a very quick process. Go ahead and take a little extra of the CoverGirl, and we're going to go ahead and blend that along the jawline. Now we're going to take some Colormate's dollar store lipstick in a brown shade for the contour. Any brown cream will do. You can use an expensive. I use very cheap. This is just to lay out from the top of my ear to the corner of my mouth my contour zones that I enjoy to place upon myself. You'll notice at this point that my ears become a little red. The wig cap tends to restrict a little blood flow and make them a little bit crazy. I'm also going to run my contours along my jaw to smooth them out and make them a bit smaller, cutting my chin off a little just to make sure everything is nice and chiseled down and feminine. This is the technique I've learned. Take that and also run it along any double chin you might have. Mine is very small, but this will allow you to transfer your makeup down to your neck without it looking like an entire cut off zone. I take my makeup wipe and clean off my blending sponge. The silicone is easy to clean, and you're able to use a clean surface to blend any edges so that you're not making a mess of the contoured creams that you already have, as they are quite dark and can spread very far. I'm taking here and blending out the contour around my cheekbones, just making sure it's nice and smooth, cleaning as I go to make sure I'm not dragging any dark excess product along my foundation. Once again, we're going to clean our blending sponge and we're going to work on our highlight zones, blending those out nicely. Taking that white shade, mixing it in with the foundation, and also spreading it out in the areas where you need your highlights. I'm taking here and I'm adding a little bit more primer, which is basically my clown white mixed in with some foundation. I'm going to take that and I'll go ahead and just put that across the lid to make sure it's nice and bright and open and full to make sure we have a nice space for makeup. I'm then going to take my NYX Mineral Stick Foundation and cut out a space in between my jaw and my neck, running along the area I contoured earlier to make sure there's a clear separation and that you'll be able to see that I have contoured my jawline area and that there is not a brown line on my neck. After you blended, we'll go in with the Coty Airspun Translucent Setting Powder. This is more see-through without as much coverage. You're going to place this on all the areas you have contoured. That way you can still see the contour underneath as a base, and you won't have to worry about where you're placing your contours later. It's a good extra step in case you need a little helping hand when placing your contours with your powder once you get in with that. Now back in with the neutral tone Coty powder. This is lighter with more pigment. We're going to use this on the highlights and the neck area to really brighten those up and give them a nice full coverage, bright finish. Once your setting powder is placed, we're going to take our fluffy brush and brush away any excess powder, and also this is pushing in any of the powder that's already on the skin to make sure everything is nice and set and there's no wet cream on your face. Now that we look appropriately like an egg person, we are actually going to go in with a little bit of contour. This contour and highlight palette is the Profusion Studio Contour. It is a very cheap palette with very good results. You don't have to worry about it being too heavy. You can layer nicely, and you can always go back on where you've started to make sure you can blend out seamlessly. We're going to use the lighter contour shade and push that into the areas where we're already contoured with our cream, starting from the ear down to the corner of the mouth and moving it up into the temples. Do that on both sides, and then we'll also go ahead and start to blend that out a little. Now we're going to go ahead and take the same shade and bring our forehead down. And we're going to go ahead and just bring that into the larger areas just to chisel it down and make it not look as manly. We're just going to make it nice and rounded, bringing it into our contours that are on our cheekbones to make sure everything blends together nicely. Just blending it around, making sure everything's nice and soft. After that, we're going to run over our jawline, and I use a little extra on my chin because it is a bit masculine for my taste. I'll take this shade and run it over the points of my chin and a little bit up into my jawline, just to bring everything down, bring some under the chin, and follow that line you made earlier to cover up any double chin you might have had. Just bringing that down and blending it out into those zones to make sure everything's nice and contoured and tucked away. We're going to take the darkest shade now. We're going to bring that into the contours in the smalls of the contours. Just a touch, just to bring an extra bit of dimension. And this will give you a nice chiseled look, and it'll give you actually a little bit more of a natural contour effect, where it has the multiple shades that gives you a little more dimension. Now we are going to take our eyeshadow brush or any other fluffy small brush you have. We're going to take that and go back to our contour palette. We're going to go ahead and contour our nose area with the lighter shade, pretty much only, bringing it down from the eyebrow area. I make my nose very snatched and small. It is my preferred look. It suits me best and allows me to have a nice feminine face once the process is complete. I'll run down the sides of the nose on both sides and eventually a small amount into my nostril area to bring that connected up with the contours I've placed on the sides. At this point, we'll run in with the medium contour shade, and we will create the effect of a small button nose by creating a little bit of a dip right here towards the tip of the nose that I want to create. This will be blended up into the highlight towards the top and cut off very sharply on the bottom towards the tip of the nose to make sure there's a good contrast and that you're able to see the shape that I'm promoting here. Now, to speed things up a bit for this part of the tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and increase the speed just a tad. You can always slow it down in the YouTube viewer to see any details that you may have missed. I'm going to go over the nose area with a little bit of a regular powder foundation just to soften things up a bit. Now we're going to go in with some blush, my favorite. This is a nice matte red tone blush, very coral. We're going to go in with a fluffy brush. Pat a little bit on the back of your hand for smoothness. We'll start in the upper section and move our way down. This way we can build up some coverage and see how much you really need to be blushing. Bringing this blush further up into the contour towards more of the forehead area gives you also a bit of a facelift in a way that brings more of the blood flow up into the upper face and gives you a lot more of a snatched look. You can add just a little bit to the forehead and the chin area where you've placed intense contours, just to bring a little color back in those areas so it doesn't look so ghosty. And now we're going to start out with some brows. We're going to take our small concealer brush with the brown lipstick that I had before. We're going to use this brown cream to go ahead and mark out our brows. I follow my contour up from the curve of my fake nose onto my eyebrow area, creating a nice high arch that is both feminine and fierce. Once you've made a shape, we're going to take our translucent setting powder and we're going to cover that shape and set it down in the place that it's already in. That way we can carve out any areas we need with our clown white, as shown here, just to make a nice clean line without blending the products together. And this will also allow you to add more dimension if you need to, whether that be with a different color or with the same color intensified with another layer. Now, I went ahead and saved us a little time by going ahead and speeding up through that. We're going to move on to eyeshadow now with the NYX Avent Pop. This is a wonderful palette, plenty of matte shades for a nice subtle look with plenty of nice colors. I'm going to use the black and start a shape. I usually start with the outer corner of my eye because I use my natural eye shape, and I'll end up blending that up and over with a little bit of the brown, and this brown will also blend nicely into the contour that I've already placed, creating a nice, round, beautiful eye. Now mind you, you can also do darker shades of color. I chose today's look to be a bit more classic, glamour, black and white, smoky eye. Now this shade here with the light peach, I'm going to use that as a transition shade between the black, the brown, and my eyelid, as it is currently colored, and this will make a nice blend. Now that the eyeshadow's in place, we'll use eyeliner. This is the Wet n Wild H2O Proof Black Liner. Has a very nice sharp tip for plenty of detail. Now you have to be careful with this one because it will blend in with other products if they are a cream base, as would any other liquid liner. But this one in particular tends to have a lot of pigment and is very difficult to get rid of once it's been placed. I take my wing from the corner of the first section of my eye, near the tear duct, and I drag it out very thinly across and wing it out quite harshly at the end. We're going to re-wet and start again on the other side, trying to make them as even as possible. At this point, I realized that I just needed to get a wipe so I could actually take away the mistake I had just made, because that was the only way that I was going to be able to fix this situation, being as it was on the bottom of my eye. But you can always do this, and remember what products you use to make your face the color it was, and just replace it with more cream and powder, and it should blend in fairly nicely. Now this step is a little more advanced. I tend to go on the bottom line of my lashes, right underneath of them, and connect it usually to the upper wing. Today I'm not going to be connecting it, but I will be dragging it down closer to the inner corner of my eye, but leaving it open slightly so that it looks as if I have a larger eye shape. I do also end up drawing on a base line of lower lashes, just to add a little bit of drama and dimension without having to actually apply lashes. Once that has been nice and settled, we will take our small concealer brush, clean that off, and use some white concealer. We'll use this on the inner corners of the eye, matching it with the line that we just drawn right above. We'll go ahead and do that on both sides. Make sure it's nice and bright. This gives you a beautiful look. And then once you're done creating those lines, you'll take a nice matte white eyeshadow. I have very little left. And we'll be placing that in the corners and dragging it over, making sure to set all of that cream. As you can see, it creates a very nice glow. Now onto mascara. Any mascara will do as long as it's black and cheap. You can use expensive if you want, but it's really not going to matter because all you're doing is coloring in your very powdery eyelashes at this point. Go ahead and make sure you get the tops and bottom lashes on both sides before we apply false lashes. Now we're on to lips before lashes. This is the Kat Von D. I forget the shade, but it is a very beautiful matte bright red. I love it because it actually blends in quite well with certain foundations as to where it won't crack or peel. It stays very well placed, does not move. You can eat with it, drink with it, and it probably will not go anywhere. I start my lip shape with an X at the top just to create the dimension of the Cupid's bow. I do overdraw my lip quite severely since mine is a little bit lacking. And then I round that out from the corner of my mouth up to the top, just to create a nice pout. Once you've evened out the bottom lip, the lips are almost done. Go ahead and make sure that is all set in the place that you want them to be. We'll take our brown lipstick cream and use that with a small concealer brush. Create a little dimension on the outside of the lips, a little bit darker, to create more of the illusion that they are pulled back and that the front is pushed forward as more of a pout. This creates more of a realistic look to some of the more overdrawn lip shapes that I choose to present. Now on to lashes. I prefer a nice wispy lash that you can see all the dimensions of and you can see all the pronunciations of each lash. I'm using Broadway lash glue from Dollar General. It's only $2 a tube and it stays on all night. I'll put a little bit on the back of my hand and run the lashes through them. Go ahead and just tap that on your hand a little bit and then blow. Make sure it's a little bit tacky. Do it again with the next pair. And with these, we'll go ahead and let it sit for just a moment. Now as you place that one, you can always go to the next. They should be just fine. Bend them a little, just to give them a little extra curl when they go onto your eye so they fit nicely. Try to stay as close to the line that you've drawn as possible. Unless your line is much thicker than mine, then you can probably move up a little bit, but you may also need a thicker lash. Always try to pinch your lashes onto your natural lashes, just to create a realistic look. We're going to finish with the NYX matte setting spray. Make sure that gets everywhere. Make sure you are nice and dry before anything else is done. And I felt like I needed a little bit more blush, just for the look I was presenting, so I added a little bit in areas I felt personally needed a little more color. I enjoy a lot of blush, some people don't, but I feel like it just gives for an elegant appearance. Made sure everything was dry, it was still kind of wet up top. A little bit more blush in the areas that we had contoured just to match out what we threw on our cheeks. And that's the finished look. Thank you for stopping by, watching this tutorial, and I hope you learned something. Goodbye.